Hello, everybody. I am very excited for you to have this event with coaching others, one of your peers in the class. And so, this video tutorial is one way to pique your thinking about how to be an effective coach of others, whether you're in a managerial role or an individual contributor one. It will be a brief tutorial about coaching and prepare you for tonight's event. So, first of all, coaching is really considered to be now a very contemporary management tool in your toolkit. If you look at this gentleman here barking orders, he would be considered very old school, kind of this command and control approach that's now outdated. So if you look at the cartoon here, I made it clear that I don't want my employees to be scared of me. Any employee who is scared of me will be fired immediately. This is that kind of old school thinking that's outdated. Now it's important for you as managers and as peers of other people at work to be a skillful coach. The minute you have a team of direct reports reporting to you, you need to be a good coach to guide them in their growth. So what's the value of coaching? Various studies have shown a number of different positive impacts, including all of these things. So I won't read all of them, but workers, essentially the people on your team, will be more productive. They will be more committed and satisfied in their careers, less likely to leave your group, and have enhanced well-being and self-efficacy or confidence. So very much positive attributes of coaching, not to mention the fact that being a better coach for you can have benefits of feeling good about being able to be a better grower of talent within your group. Now, to prepare you to coach for this particular event, first you'll start by reviewing the two videos, one involving good coaching and the other involving bad coaching. As you can see, you only need about 15 minutes, and you're going to compare the two and think, well, what does the good coach do that the bad coach doesn't? And prepare the bad coaching video. Is very funny, but just reminds us of all these things we really wouldn't want to do. The second is to review the optional article on My Coaches titled Coaching for Change if you're interested. It's a short but very good, powerful, contemporary article on the value of coaching and what that looks like. Next, I would recommend that you watch the powerful questions video at the link I've put on my courses for you. It's an interview with somebody through ICF, which is the International Coaching Federation, the accrediting body for coaches today, on an expert on getting you to think about what it means to be a good coach in terms of being able to ask people questions. Because as you'll soon learn, most of being a good coach boils down to allowing the coachee to drive the conversation and for you to ask powerful questions to help them sense make around their reality and set an action plan to improve and change. Next, you'll read the Grow coaching model on the coaching dialogue. I've embedded a link in my courses for you related to that. And what you're looking for there, I'll show it to you in a minute, is the process involving the coaching dialogue. How do you start the conversation and lead somebody through a coaching session? Before you actually talk to your partner for tonight's event, you'll want to review your exceptional leadership behavior scores from last week and start to try to make sense of them. Because the last week, the assessment was intended to really push your thinking to say, am I already exhibiting a lot of leadership behaviors, and what might I do with relative ease to actually enhance my leadership by playing with additional behaviors? Next, you want to identify an issue that you're grappling with that your partner can coach you on. And so you might be thinking, what do I want to do next after I get my MBA? How can I handle a conflict that I'm having with a colleague at work, and the issue seems to be stemming from our virtual engagement? How could you think about other stress that you're under in today's environment? Something that you need to work through, but that you have not specifically answered yet. So it could be anything personal, frankly, or something more in the professional vein. And then lastly, you'll want to call your partner at 7 to 7:30 roughly Eastern Standard Time, depending on how much time you need to prepare. So if you've watched the previously assigned videos on good and bad coaching, you can probably start at 7 p.m. because I think if you get started at 6, you would probably be able to review these other few things and prepare in an hour pretty readily. Now, briefly, in terms of the bad and good coaching videos, what you'll be looking for is what behaviors in the video represent good coaching. And to highlight too, she is a very, very good listener, and she asks her coachee very good questions. Also, what does the process of coaching look like to you? What stages are involved? And so just kind of watch that. And then when you read the Grow Model article, I think that will really settle you in on the coaching stages that you'll use with your peer. Today's new leadership, I wanted to give you one of my favorite quotes. The wicked leader is he who the people despise. The good leader is he who the people revere. The great leader is he who the people say we did it ourselves. This is that idea that in today's environment, it's not so much about proving that you're a great leader by how charismatic you are or how much you take charge, as much as you empower other people to take charge and feel like they did it, they led. That's a sign of a good leader, and good coaching is part of that toolkit. Here is the Grow model itself. Okay, so you should be able to coach your colleague in a 10 to 30 minute time span on an issue that he or she's grappling with, whether it be switching careers, thinking about how to approach a boss for a raise. And so they just need to have something in mind, as should you, during your conversation. So the first thing that you want to do is figure out what their goal is for the coaching conversation. So you would say, what's the problem that you're grappling with that I can help you with? And let them say, well, I'm trying to figure out what I want to do once I finish with my MBA. Next, you want to ask them good questions about where they are now. What is it that they're thinking about in the way of their situation? So if they were thinking about what they want to do after getting an MBA, you could ask them questions around, well, what are your options? What are you thinking through? What goes through your mind? And let them noodle on a lot of the things rolling around in their head that represent reality. Then you want to push on them more specifically for the specific options to say, well, okay, I've heard you talking about 2 or 3 different things that you might want to do after you finish. Let's talk about them in detail specifically, and what are the pros and cons of those. And then lastly, you want to push them to take at least one step in the right direction for them, a concrete action that they can pursue to help them in figuring out what they want to do. So as an example, one thing they might generate on, I don't know what I want to do with once I get my MBA, would be to ask them questions that probably lead them to pursuing knowledge on other industries or specific industries. So you might say, I hear you talking about advertising. What might be a step you could take to further figure out whether that is of interest to you? And by the end, you want a concrete action that you can that they can pursue, and that's how you close the conversation. Notably, again, I'd like to raise your attention to this idea of the old leadership and the new leadership. If you look here, old leadership used to be much more about one-directional communication, where a boss basically tells somebody what to do, whereas now really good management is about bi-directional communication. In the old frame of reference for management and leadership, it was to direct people, and now leadership is very much situational. For example, if you have a very strong employee, you may well want to jointly set goals for him or her for the year and then allow that person to go off to pursue those versus tell them what to do. Nowadays, the emphasis is on coaching rather than telling. It is on the relationship and the task versus just the task. And coaching is really one way to focus on the relationship. And lastly, influence used to be just on authority. I'm going to tell you what to do. But now in today's environment, because we're in flatter team-based organizations, your influence is really based on the trust, rapport, and empowerment that you have with other people. And coaching is one way to really empower people and build that relationship. It also means that you have to have a good relationship probably to begin with that particular employee. Now, just a few other comments about this asking. You'll find that powerful questions are your friend. So you want to think about yourself with other people. Do you spend more time inquiring about the reality or just telling them, giving them suggestions about what to do? Today's great leadership is really more about inquiring about what's working for them in their roles, where would they like to improve, what resources do they need, and how can you be of assistance? And as a rule of thumb, you want to ask more than you tell. So if you aim for a ratio of about 4 questions to every one statement or directive, you're in a much better spot. And you can identify questions ahead of time that you would want to ask of your direct reports to get them to do the talking and thinking through how to proceed. Here is a final quote. You can tell whether a man is clever by his answers. You can tell whether he is wise by his questions. I think this was a very wise statement, which probes us all to think a lot more about engaging other people about what they think rather than simply telling them what to do. With that, I wish you all the best with tonight's event.